Joining us now, former Liberal Senator Holly Hughes and Sky News host Caleb Bond. Great to see you both. Caleb, when even his closest friends like Matt Canavan and John Wacker-Williams are sending messages like this, you really do get the sense that many in the coalition, and particularly in the Nationals, are utterly fed up with these tactics.
Well, I think they're probably also upset at just the sideshow that it creates for the party. But if what Barnaby said today is true, which is that, Peter Dutton asked him twice to leave the coalition, that he's been told, we need generational change. In other words, it's time for you to bugger off, Barnaby. At a time when he is still a successful and popular retail politician, I can kind of understand why he's got the you-know-whats with the party. I mean, the point you make about disappearing quietly into the background, you don't necessarily want to do that when you are still in the game. And I think Barnaby is still in the game. He certainly thinks he's still in the game. And he's positioning himself in a place where he can perhaps stay in the game. And if he were to go to One Nation and run as a senator in Queensland, I have no doubt he would still be in the game.
But you draw a contrast between Matt Canavan and Barnaby Joyce. Matt Canavan is on the backbench because he chooses to be. He is making news multiple times a week because of policy, because of issues like net zero that he's campaigning for and arguing for, not because he's deciding whether to leave a party or some other personal scandal. Holly Hughes, let's bring you in. What do you think about this?
Look, I'm really torn because I do understand Barnaby's position. I resigned from the Liberal Party, God, it feels like 3 years ago, but I think it was only a week ago. But I did so over a policy position after I saw out my tenure and 6 months after the election. And because I was sick of the circus, but it was one that I wanted to be able to commentate without fear or favour about. I think it is really sad, though, when someone who has been a leader of a party gets to a point where they feel that they're unable to contribute to that party anymore. And, I've learned it. Lots of us in politics have learned it. The one thing we know is loyalty literally only ever goes one way. You can give your life to a political party and they will absolutely turf you out with the trash in 2.5 minutes and never look back. And so I understand where Barney's coming from. I also understand how his colleagues feel. I think it's been incredibly poorly managed when you look at what Barnaby has said about David Littleproud and Kevin Hogan perhaps not even reaching out to him as leader and deputy leader of the National Party when this has been going on for 5 weeks. It's not like Barnaby said it at the beginning of the week and ended at the end of this week. It's been going now for a substantial period of time. And if any fences needed to be mended, they should have been done by now.
Yeah, that is another side of it, as you just say. The Nationals leadership, David Littleproud at the moment, perhaps had he given Barnaby Joyce a front bench position, perhaps, they would still have that extra seat in the parliament. We don't know how that would have played out. He might have resigned anyway. All right, let's turn now to this tragic story from the mid-north coast of New South Wales today. A young Swiss woman killed in a shark attack and her friend was critically injured. This all has happened during the deadliest 6-year stretch for shark fatalities in nearly a century. And critics are demanding tougher action to prevent more attacks. Now, according to The Telegraph, there have been 13 shark attacks nationally this year, and 5 of those were fatal. So, Caleb, this was a remote, unpatrolled beach, but it also comes as, we're seeing this trend, and as the state government in New South Wales is doing this trial where they remove shark nets, which would be really troubling families. They want to know when they go to the beach with their kids over the summer period that they're going to be safe. Yeah,
and I mean, we should take every precaution available. And look, I don't profess to be an expert on what works best in that situation. Obviously, if it's an unmonitored beach, you accept there is some risk when you go into the water that things like this can happen. But if it is finding that shark and killing it, culling it. If it's having an overall shark cull, if it is keeping shark nets on beaches where they are currently used, which I think is a no-brainer. We also have smart drum lines, all these other things available to us now. We should be using a combination of all of them, because I don't care what the greenies say about, oh, you know, the water is the shark's home and you go in the water, you get bitten. Oh, well, you should just accept that you lost your leg, little Johnny. No. We rose to the top of the tree. We are the apex predator. Evolution has made us so. We go in the water. We're allowed to go in the water, and we're allowed to restrict other animals' movement, kill other animals, so we can go in the water. Simple as that.
Yeah. I personally do not understand the hand-wringing over the shark nets. Have the shark nets there. Make people not just be safe, but feel safe when they're swimming. And of course, that wouldn't apply in this scenario because it's such a remote beach. But I just do not understand why the Minns government is progressing with this trial where they want to remove shark nets. Holly, what do you think?
It's left-wing Greens lunacy. We should absolutely have the shark nets. But the reality is, I mean, is this a generation that did not watch Jaws? I mean, we all know you don't swim at dusk or you don't swim at dawn, particularly on unpatrolled beaches and areas that aren't protected by things like shark nets. I mean, that is the peak time for shark attacks to occur. I mean, Caleb, listening to you, I've got a vision of you in boardies and I'm guessing a rashy at times. I mean,
No.
I think your rashy would be a colour that would distract all sharks. That
the chest hair is out. Don't worry about that.
But no, look, I mean, the shark net debate is ridiculous. It absolutely should be, you know, this is, I don't know what Minns is trying to do. If you've got families down at Bondi or Tamarama or Manly, absolutely you should have the shark nets.
Well, I think after that last death, I'm just being reminded that after the last death, you know, the father who was killed on the northern beaches, he paused the trial. Yeah. So it's not completely cancelled. It just paused it for the meantime. No. It's a worry. And, you know, I think we need to know more about why there is this increasing trend this year in 2025. Let's turn now to the horrific scene near the White House. 2 National Guard troops ambushed and shot, leaving them in critical condition. President Trump has called it an act of terror by an Afghan national who entered the United States in 2021. Here's what Trump had to say.
The Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here.
So, Caleb, you know, Trump is now calling for a full reinvestigation of the Afghan entrance under the Biden administration. What do you think of that move?
I think that's fair enough. I mean, we saw a very similar thing in the UK recently, where it came out that I think there was a big leak of the names of all the people who'd been brought over from Afghanistan into the UK in the midst of the war ending. And look, I think there is a responsibility for nations like the US to resettle people in Afghanistan who helped the US during the war over there, because, of course, under the rule of the Taliban again, it's pretty much guaranteed that they would be dead. So we do have a responsibility to them. But when you have millions of people taking advantage of that scheme and coming in, you can quite legitimately ask the question, how closely did we look at the particulars of each of those people? And are all of those people right to be living in the US at the moment, particularly when you've just had one of them go and attack, critically injure with a gun 2 members of the National Guard? I don't think there's anything wrong with doing what he's doing. We should be doing it everywhere.
Holly, what do you think? Because there are a lot of shootings in the United States that are by Americans, not just immigrants as well.
Yeah, but look, for anyone that knows DC and knows where K Street is in northwest of DC, it's right in the heart of that area around the Capitol. It's absolutely an incredibly busy part of Washington, DC. And I think the call that they've made that this is a possible terror attack is probably correct. But we need to look at our own immigration system. You know, how many did we bring in for Gaza without appropriate checks? And this is the problem when you have left-wing governments who are falling over themselves to bring in immigrants to the country with zero proper checks and balances in place to make sure that we're getting the right people with the ability to share our values coming into our country. So this just isn't a problem for the US. It isn't just a problem from the UK. We're probably a few years behind them, but we've got the Albanese government stepping up its immigration plan and not skilled migration, not the immigrants we need to boost productivity in this country, but an expansion of their left-wing ideology, trying to bring in the people that they I don't know whether they're guilt-ridden or whatever their issue is, but I don't think, and I'm sure many Australians have concerns, that they're not being brought in with the correct checks being put into place.
I mean, the Albanese government claims they did do proper security vetting of the Gazan cohort, but we did hear, evidence from various officials at estimates that it was fast-tracked. That it was fast-tracked. And now, of course, they were meant to be tourist visas, but you don't see Tony Burke moving to send anyone back to Gaza now that there's a ceasefire.